What's up to the 22,000 grimdark enjoyers of my channel, and welcome back to another Thematic List Build. This one is for a legion famed for their resiliency. A legion that spreads life and death across the galaxy. A legion bound to the Plague Father. It's a Thematic List Build for the Death Guard. As always, we'll start by taking a look at the rules. The Death Guard's army rule is Nurgle's Gift. It gives all of your units a dynamic aura, which uses a contagion range, which starts at 3 inches and increases 3 inches each battle round, capping at 9 inches. Enemy units in that aura subtract 1 from their toughness. This is an interesting ability, allowing you to soften the defenses of enemy units by moving your units near them. Now for me, it doesn't spark a ton of joy, as I feel there's a ton of mechanical creativity to be leveraged for a disease, poison, damage over time, dread-spreading faction. But it's a fine enough army rule. The Death Guard's only detachment at the time of this video is the Plague Company, and so that's what we got to work with. But for the theme I have in mind, I think it's pretty good. Its rule, Spread the Sickness, is twofold. Firstly, it layers another debuff into your contagion range, for which you get to choose between 3 options: worsen the enemy's skill, worsen their armor save, or worsen their objective control characteristic. All of which are good, and being able to choose gives you a degree of adaptation for the battle. The second perk is the ability to sticky objectives if they are controlled at the end of your command phase. And those stickied objectives emit the Nurgle's Gift contagion range aura. This I love, as it is mechanically useful and thematically rich with flavor. For a detachment rule which is mechanically and thematically rich, the back-end tools leave me wanting. On the enhancement front, we got Living Plague, a 3-inch range increase to the bearer's auras, which is fine. The Droning, an aura which causes enemy units that fail battle shock to suffer mortal wounds if you pass an additional dice check, which is a wasted slot. Too conditional in my opinion. Deadly Pathogen, an increase to the bearer's strength and attacks, which increases further if they are on an infected objective marker. Functional and fun. And Shamble Rot, a negative modifier to enemies which charge the bearer's unit. Fine, but less fun. And on the stratagem front, things are a bit more interesting. Ferric Blight is a shooting or fight phase offensive booster that improves your AP by 1 or 2 if the target is on an infected objective marker. Sanguous Flux is a fight phase offensive booster that gives your unit sustained hits 1 or sustained hits 2 if your unit is within range of an infected objective marker. Disgustingly Resilient is an expensive fight phase defensive booster which reduces the damage of attacks by 1. Gifts of Decay allows a model to regain D3 wounds or 3 wounds if that unit is near an infected objective marker. Boil Blight is a shooting utility booster which tags an enemy in contagion range, giving all units shooting at that target heavy and ignores cover. This is a great idea here, but I find its execution to be flawed. And Cloud of Flies, a shooting defensive booster which gives a unit stealth. In summary, we got a fine but slightly boring army rule, an interesting detachment rule, with back-end tools which in my opinion fail to harness the thematic richness available to the Death Guard, which I suppose could be said about the army rule itself. Honestly, it makes me want to make a what the fac for the Death Guard. But we're not here for that. Let's head over to the list breakdown. Let's start with the core of this list. Serving as our Veterans of the Long War are 3 units of 10 Plague Marines. All units are configured identically. Plague Marines have a bizarre number of options and war gear configurations compared to most units. But here's the layout. The Champion and 2 Marines have heavy plague weapons. 3 Marines have bubotic weapons, and most importantly, 2 Marines have plague spewers, and 2 have plague belchers. It results in these squads having some fairly potent combat potential, while also possessing the equivalent of 2 flamers and 2 heavy flamers in the form of the belchers and spewers, which are perfect for spreading Nurgle's gifts. Each of those units will be led by a foul blight spawn. You might be thinking, what do these guys bring to the table? Well, their stanky ability gives their unit of Plague Marines fights first. So enemy units which want to try and flip an objective of yours through the fight phase will have to deal with the Plague Marines fighting first. In addition to that, they also possess extra potent torrent weapons, with the Plague Sprayer having strength 7, AP 2, and 2 damage, which is great to further douse enemy units which get too close. And to further serve their melee mitigation, one Foul Blight Spawn has been given the Shamble Rot enhancement, which will certainly make his unit harder to charge. Those 3 Plague Marine units each have their own Rhino Transport, which will aim to support the dream of infecting midfield objectives. These Rhinos also have Firing Deck 2, so you could have a bit of fun with those Rhinos basically acting like Flamerbacks. Next we got 3 Foated Bloat Drones, all taken with dual Plague Spitters. Yes, indeed, a 4th Plague-based Torrent weapon with a slightly different name and stat line. Each Foated Bloat Drone brings with it 2 Plague Spitters, but more importantly they are fairly mobile by Death Guard standards, and the aim here is to keep them obscured behind terrain, sending them out to touch key targets you want to debilitate with your Contagion auras. Next we got 2 Plague Burst Crawlers, taken with, you guessed it, Plague Spitters. These tough tanks are here to drive forward and gum up the midfield. Between them and the Rhinos, the idea is to have enough tough blocks to create a kind of Plague Blockade, while your Marines infect those objectives. With the Plague Blockade in full swing, hanging out in your backfield are 3 units of 10 Poxwalkers. Though really, I'd use 2 units for screening out Deep Strikers from your deployment zone and keep 1 in strat reserves for side quests. And because the Death Guard detachment rule allows you to sticky objectives, these Poxwalkers don't have to remain sitting on your home field objective. They can spread out to better screen, or pursue side quests of their own. And all that remains is our Warlord unit. Leading this spewer-heavy list is of course the King of Spewers, the Lord of Virulence. He's got a twin-linked Plague Spewer and a heavy Plague Fist. And to give our Warlord a little more spice, he's been given the Deadly Pathogen enhancement. He's here to arrive via Deep Strike, likely to the midfield, to support the infection of the Biosphere. He gives the unit he leads reroll wound rolls for their ranged attacks, which is nice enough. Accompanying the Lord of Virulence is a squad of 5 Blightlord Terminators. They're loaded with 3 Combi Bolters, 1 Plague Spewer, and 1 Flail of Corruption, because it's just so cool. They are here to give the Lord of Virulence a layer of defense while leveraging his reroll wound rolls ability. And also because I like when Big Cheese Warlords have an honor guard, even if they are a stinky one. And that's the list, clocking in at an even 2,000 points. Now obviously, this list has some weaknesses, namely it's lacking dedicated anti-armor tools. But hear me out. For the sake of a list themed around terraforming for Grandfather Nurgle, using their spewers and sticky objectives, I think it's quite fitting. Plus, I like a list with weaknesses. Army lists which are fine-tuned to be perfect in every scenario for as wide a range of encounters as possible are great for tournaments. But you know what else?
It's boring. Boring, I'm giving you a boring alert.
In any case, because of the lack of dedicated anti-armor tools, it will be crucial to make use of Contagion Range's -1 toughness. And I'd probably defer to the Rattle Joint Aug aura, so that wounds which slip through are more likely to connect. You'll also probably find core stratagems like tank shock and grenades to be clutch for those same reasons. And if you want to, you could put entropy cannons on the Plague Burst Crawlers. That's a wrap on this SPEW-filled thematic list build. If you enjoyed this video, there are buttons for liking, sharing, and subscribing. And special thanks to Julius Maximus, as well as my other generous patrons and channel members. I'm setting things up so that channel members and patrons get early access to videos. Just a little something for those who help keep the dream alive. Also, I've been doing hobby live streams, so if chill hobby jams are your thing, join in and let's get those projects done. Anyways, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next one.